All right, the timer's going. Um, I just wanted to kind of check back in for something that I was going live about yesterday. Um, and I wanted to do a little bit more research on some of the protests. Um, and I did. I did a little bit of digging and I found out some pretty interesting information. Um, I know it's like really easy to think of the protests as like, well, duh, if you have people here in the country illegally, they shouldn't be here. And to a lot of people, it's like, yeah, that should just be like the end of the conversation. Um, but I have been really, I wouldn't say deep diving on this a little bit more, but I have been putting more thought into the subject because it's very easy to just say, if you're here illegally, you shouldn't be here. So this is something that I found, and I posted a video earlier on some of the people who were like retaliating. This is a very emotional thing for a lot of people, and it's very easy to look at this from a political point of view. It's very easy to look at it in a very black and white manner, especially if it doesn't affect you directly. Um, and so what I mean by that is like myself, I'm an American citizen. I'm not worried about it. None of my family members have this issue. None of my in-laws is confronted with this issue. And so it's very easy for me to just go, okay, well, be here legally, you won't have these issues, right? Well, there were a few things to consider here. First of all, I didn't think about the fact that some of these folks in these protests are, I well, I'll just say it plainly. They're being abused. And I understand a lot of times in law enforcement, it's it's almost as if, and it's not just law enforcement, but it's like if you're ever caught in a wrong doing something, then the authorities kind of take it way too far. So, like, for example, there would be people who are being rounded up by ICE, and they would be getting abused by the people who round them up. And it's kind of wrong to just minimize it and be like, two wrongs don't make a right. But at the same time, it's like I see why a lot of people are fighting back. And there's this really long video clip, and I was just going to show a little bit of it just to kind of give people an idea of what folks are dealing with who are actually engaging in these protests. Because there are people who know these officers personally. Some of these folks who've been enlisted, and now the Marine Corps is involved, they've been deployed. Um, some of these guys have, Latino names. They have, Latino family members. And I saw in some of the clips that some of them were actually confronting the men and women in uniform and being like, they're deporting your family. How could you, betray your family? So like, I've been really thinking of this, like humanizing it more instead of just looking at it, I want to say objectively, and just being like, okay, if you know you're not supposed to be here, then what did you expect? But let me just be realistic in saying this. I was caught off guard on how Trump chose to handle this because I literally thought that the people who came across the border, those would be the people that would be targeted, or people who committed like horrendous crimes, rather. I didn't think it would be literally anybody. And I also wanted to keep in mind the fact that a lot of these folks have been here in this country for a very long time. Some of them have spent their entire lives here. Some of them were born here and they have family members here. So I've decided to, be a little more compassionate about this. because it's easy to be like, oh well, just go back home. But to a lot of these people, the United States is their home. And I know for like a person that might be, really, I don't want to say like sold on the idea, but they're really thinking black and white about the situation, that basically, um, these are just the rules. Let's see, extra resources. Yeah, so I got something that popped up on here, but it's not just the people that you need to be considerate of. It's also like I just learned that there were like nonprofit organizations that were involved as well. So here in the United States, we have so many different avenues to protect people. And one of the wonderful things about our country is that we have this, I won't say clause, but this saying that you're innocent until proven guilty. And I think that's another thing to consider with what's going on with the protests, is that immediately the folks who are being rounded up are immediately just called like criminals, and immediately they're all being put in one big bucket. Like they're all like, let's say if you have some people who come here and they're in a gang or whatever. So, it's just automatically presumed that these guys are just a bunch of gangsters, right? And I think that does a real that's a real bad way to look at it, because um a lot of these people are just normal people like you and I. Like they're normal working people. And I think that so much of the narrative has been driven towards criminalizing these folks, that we're not thinking about the fact that these are human beings. So I guess what I'll do is just kind of get started, just kind of bringing up some reports that I found on here, and I'm still kind of getting the hang of it. But this is just kind of what it was looking like earlier. And this is still going on. Let's see, we got the Marines that are deployed. I wanted to kind of show what it looked like earlier. Um, I wish I really would have had that one clip of some of the protesters kind of yelling at these folks. Just check this out. Like, how scary is that? You have the police, you have the Marine Corps.
Deep two, can I get you on the right side?
you can see in the distance how they have the Mexican and the American flag, which I don't understand. But these are the guys that I was talking about earlier, the guys on horseback. There are actually some of these clips where these guys have like these sticks and they they beat these people with sticks sometimes, which I think is really, really wild. Um, I don't know why or how they have a right to beat these guys with sticks, but yeah. So like there are even clips where um these folks when they come and they protest, they're like yelling at these officers, and some of these officers they have Latin names, and there was earlier when they were talking about, hey, they're gonna deport you too, they're deporting your family. And like I said before, it's very easy for us to think of this as like, you know, you're here illegally, you can't stay here. That's so simple. But the human aspect, we're really losing a human aspect on this. And I'm not saying that it's okay for people to cross the border illegally. I'm not saying that. But I do think that to an extent, I feel there's a way that we can treat people in this experience. And even though the letter of the law is what it is, we should be mindful of the fact that there are people's families that are being affected by this like directly. So then this is another thing that I wanted to share as well. Um, Something that's been happening. Let's see, let's do this part. Because another concern that came up was how are these folks getting the support that they're getting, right? How are they able to be organized? Now, that clip was way more peaceful than the one from earlier. But as you can imagine, and as you might have seen from other clips, it does get really super violent. But I just kind of wanted to get that imagery out of what it looks like when people come out here to express their views. Because, yes, although legally speaking, these folks are in the right for, getting these people out of here, deporting them, even by force. I think the human aspect is kind of getting lost on us here. So here's the thing here too. Let's see. Let me see. Trump's border immigration. So I just showed you guys the Marine Corps. I also wanted to show this as well.
FBI says it is now investigating the funding behind these anti-ICE protests in LA. Some lawmakers fear foreign influence and ideological donations are fueling the violence, and protesters are being paid. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joining us. These protests, as you know, they started organically following a massive ICE raid, but they have since taken a turn. You did some digging. Who is behind this funding?
So our researchers found there are two main organizations, Didi, involved in funding these LA protests: the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights and also the Central American Resource Center, both receiving government funding at the federal and also state levels. FBI Director Kash Patel announcing this week the FBI is investigating any and all monetary connections responsible for these riots, following mostly peaceful demonstrations in response to several immigration raids in LA late last week. Anti-ICE protests began escalating. Immigration officers assaulted, vehicles burned, and businesses looted. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons calling it pure chaos.
If you have to watch out for a burnt car, that isn't a peaceful protest.
David Carter, who teaches criminal justice at Michigan State, says funding protests is not uncommon and not all are violent. But the FBI's investigation won't focus on the act of funding, rather the intent behind the money given.
Funding to support illegal activities would be unlawful.
Our researchers found two organizations heavily involved in these protests: the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, who receives nearly $34 million a year in government grants, including private donations from ActBlue, a Democratic fundraising platform. Also, The Central American Resource Center is the second, receiving federal and California state grants along with private funding. President Trump speaking in Fort Bragg Tuesday, saying some protesters are being compensated.
They're incompetent, and they paid troublemakers.
A history
Now, this is something that I thought was interesting. So I did want to start out the stream with kind of, I don't know, softening the tone before I present, because it's very easy, like I said, to look at this from a legal standpoint. And the reason why I'm even conflicted now. Okay, so like I'm the type of person that does lean on the letter of the law. Like I feel like if you're breaking the law and there are enforcements put in place, that's why we have, tools, well, not tools, but that's why we have people like law enforcement, people like, the Marine Corps to, mobilize and keep things civil. But at the same time, it's hard to see the other side when you have to consider things like funding from potentially foreign interest groups, or they're funneling monies in order to support people who are being disruptive in the country. So like it's like on one end you want to be able to, like I said earlier, you want to be able to humanize people, you want to be able to see people's point of view and understand where they're coming from. But then at the same time, when you have people actually doing damage to property and causing a disturbance within the community, it's like it's already difficult to even see a person's point of view when they're breaking the law, right? And a lot of times, I'm actually going to show how one of the spokespersons for one of these major organizations just kind of conflate many American issues to justify what's actually going on here. Because when I learned that there may be funding for people who are out here protesting, well, they're not even protesting. The people who are actually paid to be disruptors. Because I do believe that there are a lot of people out there who are actually protesting. I do believe there are actually people out there who are being peaceful. And that's why I started out by showing a clip of how people who may be protesting might view the police and the Marines as hostile. And if you're coming in peace, if you're just coming to express your views, but you see all these guys with this gear, and you see them with these, the guns and all this other stuff, I mean, it can make you uncomfortable. Even the people riding around on horseback with weapons. And like I said before, I have a video that shows how, these guys with these on horseback, they have these, I don't know if they're nightsticks. Well, I guess I'm assuming they're nightsticks. And I guess they have authorization to use these nightsticks because I guess they're considered non-lethal at their own disposal. Like they could just decide to just start hitting people for whatever reason. Like if they feel threatened or they feel like somebody might be hostile, uh, they they can just do this, right? So on one end, I'm thinking about the people who are actually exercising their right to protest. But then on the other end, it's like there are so many things happening on the other side that's not that's not right. So for there to be foreign interest funding disruptors here in the United States, I think that's a real issue here. Um, so yeah, that's kind of scary.
A professor at Cedarville University, Stanley Schwartz compares what's happening in LA to the death of George Floyd in 2020.
Real quick, this is what I mean when I talked about conflating, right? So that's actually perfect timing that they did that. So, there's a lot of controversy with the whole George Floyd thing. A lot of times the outrage that is going on with this protest, oftentimes it does get compared by those people who are being affected to George Floyd. Now, I don't truly understand how those two correlate, because this is my thought. You got people on the right and the left. You got people who have certain views that say that, you know, what happened to George Floyd, it's a police brutality situation. He was doing something he had no business. And then you have the other side that's like, there's no reason for a man to be kneeling on, for an officer to be kneeling on this man's neck until he died. There's that whole uproar, right? And not to get too deep into that because it's highly controversial and it's very triggering for a lot of people. This is what I'm kind of curious about. How do you take police brutality, you know, overwhelmingly affecting Black males in this country, and conflate that with someone came to this country illegally? Like, George Floyd did not come here illegally, right? And I'm not trying to stir anything, but I just feel as though, and I'm gonna just say this because this is just on my heart, and all due respect to anybody who tunes into live, but why is it just me, or does it feel like every time there's a tragedy in this country, immediately it gets conflated with Black issues, right? Shout out to Lead Quarter Trucker. Like, I just feel as though, and then also with Lead Quarter Trucker, we were talking yesterday, and he brought up this whole issue of socialism. I just learned something else too. It's a lot for me to process, you guys, because for me it's become an emotional subject. Like, when Trump first won, I was like, good, now we can close the border, and now everybody who jumped in here, we can get them out, and then we can try to work on the economy, because I just felt like there were so many issues that Americans had. There are so many things that we needed help with. And so for us to have all these extra people to come over, we don't really have the resources for ourselves. That was my mentality. Now, I was completely caught off guard, when he started going after people that's been here that had nothing to do with the border. Like, the Biden administration, people who've been here for decades, right? Even like elderly people who've been here and they've been undocumented, they ain't been bothering nobody, right? So I'm not gonna lie, even I got caught off guard with that. But this is why I feel funny, because a part of me was like, well, it's the law, but then the other part of me is like, come on, man, like, you're gonna mess with the abuela, you know what I mean? You're gonna mess with the people who've been here forever, and then you're putting them in the same category as people who have criminal records. I don't think that's fair. Like, and I know it'll be a whole lot more work to be like, okay, let's cherry pick who we gonna round up. But I thought at least it would be easier for them to target the people who flooded in through the border from the beginning. I just felt like for them to go after everybody, I just, I don't know, like, when I first thought about it, I was like, yeah, no brainer, open shut case. But again, when you think about people, like some people who just, they worked hard, they own a business, or they're taking care of their family, their kids are off to college, things like that. Like, they contribute to society, they're functional people, they don't get into any legal trouble. But I mean, I guess the letter of the law is still the letter of the law. That's the rule, right? Going back to this whole George Floyd situation, as a Black person, right? Black woman married to a Black man, have Black children, it kind of bothers me that people who have their own issues, whether it be immigrants, whether it be LGBTQ, or whatever other, what you call it, marginalized group, when they have their hardships, to say, oh yeah, this is like George Floyd. No, it's not. Like, it's truly not. Like, you can go back home. No, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but Other nations of people can trace their lineage and they can go and start over. For people like George Floyd, myself, my family, there is no, hey, if this Trump administration go left or if something goes, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Nigeria. It's none of that. So and I think that a lot of times, especially like the mainstream media, they do that a lot because I don't think that there's truly any representation for the Black community to say the type of things that I'm saying. Um, I don't see this as a situation like George Floyd. I don't see this as, people who've been oppressed since they were forced to be here and then, have to work their way through, history of being systematically oppressed, things like that. I believe these are folks that, for whatever reason, they had a better life here, they had better opportunities here, they took advantage of it, but then at the same time, they didn't do it in a legal fashion, and now it's catching up with them. I don't think that's the same. So I just had to get that part off because it's gonna get a little deeper when it talks about the funding and the people in the background.
Organic, peaceful protests turning into organized, professional, and violent ones.
The conflict from the very beginning is citizens against law enforcement. So it becomes very difficult then to tamp down a protest as it's becoming more violent.
Now, Just the News also reports the Party for Socialism and Liberation, who has alleged ties to the Chinese Communist Party, were also involved with protests. Carter also telling us the FBI will likely look at infrastructure first to help determine where the funding is coming from.
Now, this going back to what Led Quarter Trucker was talking about last night on live stream yesterday. The fact that the Democrats have ties to, communists, representing, organizations or socialist organizations, United States is capitalism, you know, and that's the thing that I love about this country is that regardless of who you are and what your background is, you can have an opportunity here. You can make your opportunity. This is a part of the reasons why I may seem like I'm talking both ways about what my opinion is about people being rounded up. You know, I'll be honest with you because I used to be a registered Democrat. I still have some pretty left leaning views. This is how I truly feel. I feel like if a person is contributing to society, they're not breaking any laws, you know, leave them alone. Like, that's how I feel. I think that we should only target, like, people who break laws, especially like repeat offenders, people who have a record for being, criminals, and especially targeting the folks who came across the border during the Biden administration. Because I just feel like the people who've been here forever, it's almost like they're catching strays. Like they didn't do anything. Okay, technically coming here illegally, even if you came here illegally back in 1970 something, you still broke the law. So like this idea that you're not you didn't break the law because you came here a long time ago and you've been a functional person in society. Technically, you still broke the law. So when they say criminal alien, they're still talking about the same person who came here a long time ago to have a better life in comparison to the person who came here during a Biden administration and has a rap sheet. Unfortunately, both of them get lumped in, right? And so just to stick a pin in that point. So here's my other thing. This is one of the reasons why I could not continue to be a registered Democrat because when you have these groups that are affiliated with the Democratic Party who are anti-capitalist, I don't know. I think it's scary that we have a political party that is just, in my opinion, I feel like the Democrats have like kind of gone rogue. Like they don't seem to be in touch with the people. They don't seem to have any interest in helping Americans. They seem like they represent like foreign countries. I'm sorry, and I say this a lot. During the pandemic, there were so many Americans under duress. To this day, it's a lot of Americans who are struggling right now. And for them to push to support people, and I'm a veteran, by the way, it triggers me a little bit when I see people burning the flag. It upsets me when I see people having the United States flag upside down, spray painting on the flag. This is the thing that gets under my skin. Again, regardless of a person's background in this country, and especially for citizens in particular, um, this is the land of opportunity. And oh, I will warn all of you, I am exceedingly patriotic. I absolutely love this country. Like I've had, hey, look at me. You know what kind of history I had here. But still, this is still my country. This is still the country that I serve. And, if the Trump administration called me to serve again, I'd serve again proudly because I've gotten a lot of opportunities here and I've gotten the chance to afford other people opportunities with my service. So I'm very, very patriotic. So like all of the controversy of, there it's one thing if you're mad at the current administration. It's a whole other ball game if you come over here and you're just disrespecting the place, setting the place on fire. And then on top of that, you got, what you call it, these private organizations with their interests funding people to continue to reap chaos in our communities. And like I said before, I laughed at it last night when, the quarter trucker brought up how, you know, we had to pay for folks to be put somewhere, taxpayers. We paid for their children's school, we paid for their food, clothes, provision. Now we got to pay to get, the military and the police to get them out. Then we got to pay to fix the roads and everything. And just the thought that our own government, the Democratic side, is paying against the taxpayer. This is why I could not, in good conscience, continue to be a registered Democrat because I just felt like there's something wrong here. Like, why aren't we looking at the border being secure as regardless of your party, regardless of your ideology, this is your country. This is where you live. For a lot of us, this is where our spouses are. This is where our children are. You might have a pet. They're here. You don't want anybody to come and disrupt that, right? So anyhow, I'm just reading the chat real quick. So I see Lead Quarter Trucker say, no, not even close, no representation. Yeah. So that's the crazy thing is like to think that there are, it's one thing to be left leaning. It's another to be affiliated with big name politicians like Joe Biden himself or, the entire Democratic Party. Like this is why I had to stop also donating because I used to donate quite a bit of money to the Democratic Party when I used to be a registered Democrat. And I was feeling like, and especially Black people in the Democratic Party, you think that's the party for you because you're pretty much trained and taught growing up. Like when it comes to politics, you want to be a Democrat. Just automatically, if you're Black, you should be Democrat. That's just how it is, right? And so when I'm the type of person that I don't just register, I also participate. I volunteer and I donate. I make a little extra money and I send it over, right? Okay, cool. One thing I started realizing when I was doing this was the condition of the Black community was only getting worse. So I felt like, why am I donating so much? Not just money, time, my energy in promoting the party. And when I come back to my community, it's in worse and worse condition. And then there are a lot of liberal leaning communities that were in far better condition than my own. So it was like, when it comes to a certain side of town, the Democrats over there, it feels like regardless of who you donate to, it's not coming back to your community. Your community might be registered blue, just like the community. So I'm from Charlotte. So, the east side of town, it was blue. The west side of town I grew up on. So it was like I was donating to the local Democratic Party office, and it just felt like, no, it didn't feel like the majority of the funding was going to the east side of town. So it's like, okay, you expect all Democrats, including myself, my side of town, to put more into the party. With us, you're gonna give us a fish fry and you're gonna come to the church. Like shout out to Fannie Willis, when she was actually hanging out in the pulpit. Your politicians are gonna come to our church, shout out to Barack Obama, and sing Amazing Grace, but our streets still aren't paved. Our schools still don't have what they need. We don't have the best teachers. But you mean tell me if I change my zip code, if I go to another blue side of town, go over here, all of a sudden my dollars are gonna make sense. Now, I'll say this too. And I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do with their politics. This is just me ranting and complaining because the babies are sleeping. I got time to be on live. Anyway, my daughter just went to sleep. Like she requires me to bring her when I do this. But anyway, here's the thing. When I registered as a Republican, one thing that I realized that regardless, and mind you, I'm in North Carolina. I don't care what red district I go into. Whatever I pay into, that's what I get. And I don't know if the Democratic Party of yesteryear was like this, but I just don't feel as though the Democratic Party today has any interest in the people. The Republicans, you can have your criticisms all day. Trump, you can criticize him all day. One thing you will not say is he doesn't seem to be in his right mind. He doesn't seem to know where he is. He's falling up the stairs. His running mate is always cackling. You can never say that about Trump. Like, that's the thing about Trump. Whether you agree with him or not, he's taking action. Things are actually happening. And they're the same, pundits for the Democratic Party and all this other stuff. When I ask them questions like, how come specifically for the Black community, how come we are in worse conditions year over year? How come we're still talking about reparations? Like how come we still running in place? How come we always get the same? Shout out to Tariq Nasheed, Nothing Burger. We get the same stuff every year. And then when are we going to get to a point where we're taking care of our own communities instead of putting all of our hope and investments in a party that is more invested in people who are not from here? Well, this is my rant on that. That's just my soapbox. I appreciate y'all listening to all that. Because I just felt like that's crazy to me. But I don't know. I hope the Democratic Party get together because I'm not gonna lie to you. It just feels like right now we in a one-party government, and that's scary. But I'm gonna show you what's even more scary. This organization, that last report, Talk Nation, those that actually helped to fund the protesters. Check it out.
And here's video of people tearing concrete from planters and then slamming them on the ground to create smaller pieces to throw at officers from an overpass.
Joining us now is S. Benitez, the managing attorney at Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Okay, I don't mean to be petty, but this is what I be talking about. I hope something. I hope there are some changes with the Democratic Party. We don't even know who's talking about what. Like, I don't know. Okay, if you're here's one of the grievances I have for the Democratic Party. If you're a Democrat and you're not like a bubblegum mash of a bunch of different things, you don't exist. Why do you have to be gender fluid to talk about this? It's stuff like that. Like, anyway, yeah, I just had to say that. We don't know who this is, what this is.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Can you just go ahead and give us your
That's a woman,
initial reaction to the National
I think. I hope. I pray. I don't know.
Guard being sent in to this situation?
Yeah, I mean, this is a clear attempt to escalate a situation that even our governor was not desirous of National Guard. We know for a fact that this administration, particularly the person in charge of this administration, has had it out for California, for Los Angeles. We saw it when they refused funding for our fires, and even Governor Newsom has asked for the troops, the National Guards, to be pulled back.
You see how they're conflating? We haven't. I'm sorry, I keep stopping, but like, how do you take the LA fires and put that together with he's not pulling back the troops from the protesters? In the beginning of the clip, you literally saw. I don't even think that I won't even disrespect a protester and call this person a protester. This person is a disruptor. Anybody who's breaking down rocks so that they can throw at the police, that is not peaceful protest. And the fact that they just kind of gloss over stuff like that is beyond me. Mind you, this person is like a bigwig in one of these organizations that's helping to fund the I'm gonna call them the disruptors. They're not protesters. There are some people like, and then I have like some of my friends from the military, who are, they're working on their citizenship and things like that. My heart goes out to them with all this stuff because I have some of my colleagues who did everything the right way, and then my other colleagues who kind of, I will say the immigration system here, it's far from, to say that it's not perfect is just minimizing the fact that it is in really, really bad condition. Like, we make it extremely difficult for people to get citizenship here. And I think there does need to be some form of, reform. I think that we do need to fix our immigration system. So that's something that I do acknowledge, right? But on top of that, we have issues like these where we have not just disruptors on the street, but disruptors who are actually funding some of these folks. And the minute you ask them questions or try to hold them accountable for anything, they can't string a coherent thought together unless they're embellishing some kind of way.
Governor Newsom has also called the deployment unlawful. So it's a clear attempt to escalate, which, we can only speculate what that is for. And so it's a slippery slope when all of this has been triggered by ICE raids and the situation that we're being put in by folks who are supposed to be ICE agents covering their faces. We don't actually know who these people are. We're not having access to the people who are being taken. So this is a clear attempt at escalation.
Yeah, your group has been very vocal, of course, about denouncing these ICE raids. What are you saying to immigrants at this point? Of course, there's so much fear in the community, and these raids are expected to continue. What are you telling them, and what rights do they have?
Everyone still has the rights. We've been doing quite a bit of Know Your Rights, and I know some of our sister organizations. It's difficult at this moment. We know that all of this is being done for fear-mongering, to keep our community silent. But I would say, folks, please attend Know Your Rights trainings. Know that you are not alone. Know that this community cares and see the values that you bring. We understand you pay taxes, you pay more into taxes than they will ever give you credit for. I know more law-abiding citizens who are undocumented than folks who are documented. So we are here with you. We're fighting. We feel your struggle, and we will continue to fight for as long as we have breath to fight.
What do you have to say to critics who claim that your organization has gotten millions of dollars from the Biden administration, and they talk about your Democratic ties?
Well, we are a nonpartisan organization. We typically don't.
Nope. I'm sorry, I had to stop it there. Listen, it's so difficult for me to listen to. This is why I had to switch parties, man. It's so difficult for me to listen to this. Clearly, they're being funded by the Biden administration. Like, even when she was saying that, okay, well, ICE escalated this. Like I said before, in the beginning of the live stream, there were some of the ICE agents, and there were some agents out there who didn't have their mask on, and people recognized them. And there were protesters actually harassing some of the people who were just doing their job, and they weren't being aggressive. I showed earlier a clip of how they were just standing there. They weren't pushing anybody. They were just standing, and that was it. They were making sure everything was peaceful, making sure that nothing was violent. And I just so happened to find a peaceful clip. It was very difficult for me to find that clip, by the way. But when these folks did not have masks on their faces, they were being verbally and sometimes even physically attacked by protesters. It's kind of like, just to make an analogy, it's kind of like, me growing up in like low income housing, growing up in the hood, the housing projects, the ghetto. If I'm a police officer and people from the ghetto see me in my police uniform on duty, and people telling me, hey man, you gonna arrest me, man? We went to high school together. Blah, blah, blah. That's the type of stuff these ICE agents are going through. Like, they are being harassed by people that they know. They're doing their job. So for her to just be like, oh yeah, ICE escalated this, it's like, no, there are a lot of agitators that are literally being paid by your organization, which is backed by the Democratic Party, and in many cases by the Biden administration itself. You got disruptors who've got plenty of resources to come out here and make a mess of Los Angeles streets. And then when your governor, Gavin Newsom, chooses to do nothing about it, then the president of the United States is fulfilling his duty of the office and getting the federal government involved. That's how it works here in the United States. That's how it's supposed to go. If your state governor is not going to protect you against your private interests that are literally tearing up the streets because they don't want to go home, isn't that crazy that people come over here and they take advantage of the opportunities here, and when they get caught because they're not supposed to be here, it's like somebody coming into my house playing a video game, and then when I tell them, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Oh yeah, but I'm almost on the last level of the game. I'm almost at the boss. Yeah, but this is not your home. Okay, well now my husband's gonna come here and remove you. Now you got an issue, and it's so many issues within this, because the fact that our own government, the fact that the Democratic Party has a hand in this, and we continuously get gaslighted by basically the second half of our government. I hate to say this, but we are a two-party government, which is devastating, which means your country is run off a flip of a coin. And if I could pick a party other than Republican, I would. But if I had to choose between a party that will fund against peace in this country compared to a party that says we want safe borders, you're pretty much giving me an ultimatum at this point.
Interfere or interject with where folks should vote or any of that nature. But it is clear that this administration, which was voted for without us interfering, definitely has it out for us, particularly Latino community. We are seeing folks being rounded up, regardless of status or anything, just basically it's a fishing net. They want to catch everyone. And what is their marker? Our race. And so when we have an administration in place that is clearly being racist against our community, against our immigrants, folk who are the foundation of how we run what we have, we're going to stand up against that. It is a by proxy of the racism and the bigotry that we are seeing, not of anything else.
So basically, if you want secure borders and if you don't want people who are undocumented committing crimes in your country, you're a bigot and you're a racist. That's basically what this person is saying. Gaslight us on everything that's been going on with who's funding you, who supports you, and then try to say, oh no, it's not because we're here illegally, it's because we're Latino. Right.
What about critics who are saying that these raids are in the interest of public safety and that these undocumented people are people who have committed crimes in our community? You kind of touched on this. How are you responding to that, though? Because we keep hearing that over and over again.
Right, of course. So one thing people who continue to perpetuate that rhetoric need to understand is that this administration is saying that anyone who is here undocumented has committed a crime and a violent one.
Okay. If you go to Afghanistan undocumented, is it not a crime? If you go to the UK undocumented, is it a crime? If you go to France and you're undocumented, I'll even make it easier for you. If you go to Canada without a passport, as a United States citizen, if I go up to Niagara Falls and I go, hey, I want to go across the water and I want to be over there and I ain't got no passport, is that okay? Let's make it even better. If I want to go to Venezuela, if I want to go to China, if I want to go, let's just say south of the border, to Mexico, did I commit a crime? The answer is absolutely. If I don't have a passport, if I didn't check into customs, if I didn't make sure that their country acknowledge that I'm coming into there and make sure that I got clearance to go into their country, I have broken the law. Now, here's an interesting thing that she tried to say. Oh, they're criminals, but she had to clean it up. Violent criminals. See, because she messed around and told the truth. If you go into a country without documentation, you have already committed a crime. It doesn't matter what you do after that point. That's strike one automatically. But then she tried to change it and say, oh, it's violent crime. So it's like, let's just take that chance, shall we? Have people come in here undocumented, and let's hope they don't do anything illegal. Okay, let's say they do something illegally. They're not documented. If I do something, my name, my social, my education, my date of birth, all of my information comes right up, right? They do something, it's like a ghost did it, right? So even those people with good intentions who come over here, and let's just talk about this, we have different customs. So what might be completely acceptable where they're coming from might be illegal over here, might be taboo over here, but it's the norm over there, right? So they may not come here with the intention to do harm. They bring their culture with them. They don't mean no harm because wherever they're from, and it's not just Latinos. This is another thing that kills me. It's not just Latinos that are being affected. It's people from all over the world. Anybody who came across the border illegally. Like I said, I even have colleagues that are not so-called brown people, black and brown people. There are Europeans who are even being affected by this. So to try to take this and minimize it and be like, oh yeah, it's just, this administration and people who are against us, they just don't like Latino people. That's not true at all.
And that is not the fact. The majority of the people being caught up or detained or taken are not folks with criminal records. And so we are seeing this left and right. We saw it when they took
Can't have a criminal record if you're undocumented.
folks to El
No documentation.
Salvador. And we continue to see it now. There is no targeted effort to take out folks who are quote unquote criminals or violent criminals. It is an effort to take out the Latino community. And we have seen this before with Project Wetbag in the past. And this is a perpetual cycle that we are no longer standing for as a community, because it is not okay to target folks for their race, for who they are. We're seeing it through the LGBT community as well. It is not okay to target.
I was waiting for it. I waited for it. Anything Democrat, I'm like, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. I was waiting for her to go LGBTQ. You know why? You know what they do now? Like, this is another reason why I had to stop being a Democrat, because it's like all they got left is fear mongering. That's all they got. That's all they got. Oh, they don't like Latinos. Oh, they're just being racist. Man, I'm gonna say this too. I want to apologize to white people. It's gonna get weird, y'all. Sorry. Because people are so quick when they disagree with a white person, they're so quick to call them a racist. And that's so stupid. And I got a feel of that before. Like I was called a racist one time, and I wasn't talking about anything remotely that had to do with anything with race, and it just felt so dirty. I felt like somebody just took like poop and wiped it on my shirt in broad daylight. That allegation being thrown around like that is not okay. And especially when people like this, who is just completely dishonest in every sense of the word. I haven't heard one factual statement come out of this person's mouth, from where she get her funding, to who she represents, to the people that she claims to be stomping the yard for. This organization does not care about people. Not in the slightest. All the funding that they get. Could you imagine if they got that funding and they actually helped people with their citizenship? Getting citizenship in the United States is expensive. Maybe instead of putting money into throwing bricks at vehicles and allowing people to come here with face masks on and attack police and uniformed officers, maybe if you put your money somewhere else to actually help people with the problem, this could make this country a better place, because there are some issues. But here's the thing. I kind of understand where she's coming from, because she is one of those agitators. She's just a white collar agitator. And now what she's doing is trying to spread fear, because that's the only, and no offense to anybody who's a Democrat if they're in here, but that party needs to be revamped. It's so bad. That party is so out of touch. I don't know what it's going to take to revive the Democratic Party, because they're so off base. At this point, all they got is fear mongering. So you're going to have, you're gonna have immigrants afraid. All she did was say, "Oh no, don't worry about where we got our funding from and what we're doing with the funding. What you need to worry about is bigotry. What you need to worry about is racism. What you need to worry about is Trump." And it's like we're literally asking you questions directly, and we're trying to get answers for what you represent. And immediately, all you do is just pivot like you're playing basketball. So I think that's really crazy. But I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I was waiting for it. I was like, I'm waiting for her to hit the LGBTQ. It's just a matter of time. It's like the same calling cards every time when you talk to these folks.
Target people for who they are. We used to be a country that we believed at some point.
I like how she said "we," as if there were ever citizens involved.
That we stood because of our merits, because of what we brought to the community, because of how prideful we were working together. That is no longer a fact. We continue to work together. However, this particular administration is now targeting us because of our race, because of what we look like, because of what our name sounds like. It is no longer a targeted effort. So the rhetoric needs to be addressed.
Well, we'll continue to be having these conversations.
Yo, I just have to say this. As a Black person, she irritates me. Because of what we look like, because of what our names sound like. No, because you're undocumented. Stop playing. We're being targeted because we're different. Yeah, I'm gonna say this too. Here in the United States of America, I know a lot of times people say, we're a melting pot of cultures and stuff. We all got issues here. We all got issues. We all are trying to figure it out, regardless of your race, religion, color, creed, sexual orientation. We are all trying to figure it out. And again, is this like a live on why I'm not a Democrat? Because I'm just at a point where I'm like, yo, it's not about, hating on people or saying, oh, this person don't like me because I'm different. It's like, yo, we literally asked you about your funding. They asked her point blank about her funding, where she get it from, what she's doing with it. And all she said was orange man bad. Just, this administration is racist. Come on now. So yeah, man, that's what we're looking at. We're not just looking at just random. This is not just random people going out and protesting. This is literally organizations that are funding things, and they're getting onto legacy media, and they're also talking about what everybody else is not doing right. And so this is kind of scary, because this is not just like a regular person thing. This has money behind it. This has people behind it, right? So I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon too, though, because my daughter, she's she gets a little fussy. But I just have one more part that I want to leave with you guys, and then I'll call it a good night. So I know we had our last border czar, Kamala Harris, and I'm so glad that's over. Because basically, she was the opposite of a border czar. As far as she was concerned, I guess her job was to laugh at people walking through, but would not be right, and I would not sleep as soundly as I'm going to without playing this. Enjoy.
Earlier, I spoke to President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who's overseeing those raids. Mr. Homan, describe the state of play right now in Los Angeles.
Right now, it's calmed down, but last night was bad. It seems that the activity really picks up at nighttime, I thank God President Trump did deploy the National Guard to help protect the buildings and help protect our officers. But it's chaos. I mean, a lot of the protesters are peaceful. Some of the protesters are not. Some of the protesters quickly become criminals when they burn down cars, they damage government property, and they attack law enforcement. They're criminals. And I just wish You know, we all support the First Amendment. They can certainly protest and shout and cover their signs while they don't like what ICE does. But to cross that line on committing criminal activity, it's beyond the pale, and it needs to stop. And that's why President Trump sent the National Guard there to help bring order and at least protect property and protect life.
As you know, Mr. Homan, Governor Newsom has sued the Trump administration, asking a federal court to rule on the National Guard and the Marines being used, essentially saying they should only be used to protect federal property. If a judge rules in California's favor, what will you say to that?
I think it's wrong. I think President Trump's doing the right thing.
Just to shout out to Tom Homan, you see how he's very direct as compared to what we listened to earlier. I'm gonna let him keep talking. We get the answers to the questions. This is what I like.
Governor Newsom's late to the game. I mean, I was on the ground. I was there since last Wednesday. I was there to kick off a major operation. And Friday night, we got thousands of people, 1,000 people surrounding the federal building. Where we had, our agents were there, and people we arrested earlier that day were there, put them at great risk and did damage to the building. We had several officers hurt. He took several days for him to get there. President Trump didn't hesitate.
Have these protests stopped or slowed any single ICE raid? And if they've even stopped a single one, have they been successful?
No, they're making it more difficult. No, we're going ahead. We're making record numbers of arrests every day. And like I say, in Los Angeles, even though you got these
but you are saying, Mr. Homan, you acknowledge they're making it more difficult. I want to make sure I understood you there. They are making these ICE raids more difficult to demonstrators?
No, they're making it more dangerous, but they're making it more dangerous. Our officers with the backing of other federal agencies. It's just not ICE out there anymore. We got DEA, FBI, we got U.S. Marshals, we got ATF. President Trump bought the Hall of Government to do this operation. But
so this is another thing I wanted to say too. They have the DEA, they have the FBI, they have ICE. Like, they got everybody out there. Like, this is not just random people coming to the country for a better life. The fact that, they had to get so many agencies involved, that kind of lets you know, like, what kind of people they're trying to round up here and what kind of resistance they're getting.
But I want to make it clear. We've been running the ICE operation in Los Angeles every single day during this protest, and we're arresting a lot of bad people in that city, and we're going to continue to do it. They're not going to stop us. They're not going to slow us down.
Yeah, I want to put up a tweet for you. I'm going to send it over to you there in that studio. This is what Governor Newsom put on X, right? He put the photos you see there of Marines sleeping on top of each other. This is what he wrote in that post. You sent your troops here without fuel, food, water, or a place to sleep. Here they are being forced to sleep on the floor, piled on top of one another. What do you say to that, Mr. Homan?
Hold on. Before he say anything, as a veteran, oh, wow. Like, okay, being able to sleep on the floor in a shelter, that's a plus. Like, active military members, we be going through it. There is a reason why the VA is a special hospital for veterans. This right here, like, when I was on orders, this looks very comfortable. And then we're talking about the Marine Corps. I was in the Air Force. The Marine Corps laying in a shelter, we're just there to get the job done. And I know, like, for a lot of civilians, something like this, Gavin Newsom, he's so out of touch. I don't even think he's even served in the military. But this comes with the game here. People who think they want to join the military, anytime it's time for you to be on duty, you do what you got to do to be in place.
I see. I would take a few moments, go downtown LA and look at the damage been done by these radical protesters. I mean, President Trump's saving his city. President Trump's doing what he should have done. Gavin Newsom could have responded right away and try to quell this disturbance down there. But he supports sanctuary cities. He supports releasing criminal aliens to the streets every day.
President Trump has put on Truth Social, if they spit, we will hit. You've been in law enforcement for decades. Is that the right strategy when things are so tense?
ICE officers will defend themselves. Like I just mentioned, someone threw a Molotov cocktail at an officer. Now, in my situation, doing this for 4 decades, if that would have come close and that officer would have sustained, if that fuel would have dumped on and that Molotov cocktail would have lit that officer up, then he's responsible. I mean, he has all the authority in the world to respond with deadly force.
Mr. Holman,
so
I understand
ICE
that.
officers are going to defend themselves.
A Molotov cocktail, that's a bomb. I get that. And nobody wants to be spit on either. I want to make sure you don't think that we're condoning that either. But I guess it's sort of the temperature check, right? When the president puts out something like that, doesn't it make things hotter?
Look, I think the men and women of ICE and the National Guard are well trained. You've seen the videos. These officers have been hurt. More officers have been hurt than protesters been hurt. So these people are well trained. They know use of force, the paradigm of use of force. They know when they can take action, when they can't. They've had hundreds and hundreds of hours of training. I trust the men and women in law enforcement to use the proper use of force when needed.
So there's been reports that Stephen Miller has demanded 3,000 people should be deported a day, rounded up and deported a day, and that if not, it's going to lead to firings. Is that something you're going to be able to get to, a goal you'll be able to reach? And is that why you're now targeting day laborers as well?
Look, I agree with Stephen Miller that we need an increase in ICE operations. Man, I've said from day one, I've been asked 1,000 times, am I happy with the numbers? I'm happy we have the most secure border in history of this nation right now, the most secure border ever. I'm happy with that. I'm happy that ICE arrests have tripled the number of arrests under Joe Biden. But because what I just said, 4 years of open border, millions of illegal aliens released in this country, many are public safety threats. We have a big job to do. So yeah, we know when ICE arrests 1,000 a day, that's good, but we should be arresting more because we got right now, as you and I are speaking, we got over 600,000 illegal aliens that we know of with criminal convictions walking the streets of this country. We got to arrest them quicker. We got to make this country safer quicker. Every illegal alien criminal we arrest makes it neighborhoods much safer. Again, which is why we need this budget passed to give ICE resources they need to take this operation, make it more efficient, and increase the numbers of people.
Isn't it interesting that the people who are trying to keep the streets safe, they ask questions like, is the president being, and I'm paraphrasing, putting it in my own words, is he being too hostile when he says things like, if they spit, we're going to hit, or, these folks who are actually being hostile, they're getting funding. And the people who are actually trying to keep the streets safe, they're waiting for funding bills to be passed so that they can get funding. And the fact that Gavin Newsom wasn't willing to do his job to say, oh, look at these Marines laying on the floor. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. A lot of times those Marines are Latino. A lot of times those Marines are foreigners who are actually in the service so that they could take the steps to get citizenship. I've worked with a lot of people who were, they learned that they weren't documented when they were K through 12. And they decided to serve in the United States military so that they could get that fixed. Again, we have plenty of funding for people who want to be disruptors, which is so sad because you have people who are actually peacefully protesting being kind of mixed in with people who are just being disruptive, and it's making the whole movement look bad. So just to shout out to, like, after that terrible interview earlier, I had to leave you guys on a better note, because this is what we're looking at here. Like, it's, in my opinion, I feel like it's so much deeper than, day laborers being deported. The fact that we have even foreign interests funding against our own government, that brings up a lot of red flags. So this is something kind of like a part 2 from last night's live stream. I kind of wanted to add this bit to it too, because these organizations that are, paying disruptors, and I have to say this too, it made me think about the actual peaceful protesters. It's like, we're losing on both sides. You have American citizens like myself, you have patriots like myself who feel like, you know, as a law-abiding citizen, I want to be in a safe country. I want to raise my family in a safe environment, just like the next person. And on the other side, you have people who actually sympathize with people who disagree with me, and they think they have a right to a peaceful protest and all these other things. But at the same time, there are disruptors on the other side who basically demonize the peaceful protesters. So it's like, if you are in opposition to what I'm thinking, you got your side that is paying people to cause destruction, making you look bad. It's like you're taking a double loss, right? So it's like, if you are a peaceful protester, there are organizations who are funding disruptors. How do you win with that? And again, it goes back to me complaining about us having a two-party government, you know, because money. Shout out to Larry Quarter Trucker. Shout out to Tyler M. The saying ICE. Yeah, it's a lot going on right now, but I just thought I should come back on this live stream because I felt like the first one last night kind of didn't do it justice, and I did some research, but it just feels like, I mean, even here in North Carolina, the closest major city to my small town, I was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're gonna be protesting the day after tomorrow. It's scheduled. That's what made me think, like, this is not just people here. Like, these people are organized. They have funding. You know, I've been looking at other content creators that are actually analyzing these protesters and these disruptors. These folks are being paid. And I'll say this, shame on the Democratic Party, because they're making their own people look bad. If I just could not in good conscience, if I personally, once again, day laborers, people who've come here a long time ago, or even like some of my colleagues who I've worked with and even served in the military with, who were here undocumented, didn't know they were undocumented, you know, my heart goes out to those folks. You know, they're collateral damage at this point. But the fact that this party that's anti-Trump is, it feels like it's feels like it's anti-American. It feels like it's anti its own people. Even its own registered Democratic people who vote and support their party is being mixed in with demonstrators. Well, I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna coin it disruptors, who are creating problems, making peaceful protesters look like they're violent and uncivilized. So again, you know, I just wanted to, you know, kind of bring this point home for tonight. And, you know, I'll kind of keep you guys posted on anything that I might find out about this. But I do appreciate you guys tuning in. And I always do a shout out to my kids. I got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. I thought the 1-year-old was gonna flip out, but she being cool. But I gotta go lay her down and everything. But yeah, it was nice being on with y'all. Shout out to everybody. Where's your proof? You know what? I might just come back on here. I actually, shout out to John. Like, I actually put some videos up of some things that I found. But maybe I'll catch you on the next live stream and everything. John, I gotta get off here in a sec. But y'all have a good night. And John, hopefully I'll catch you on the next live stream. And maybe I can deep dive into some of your questions. All right, y'all have a good night.